we'll wait just 1 second.
Private discovery.
Okay.
Just have opening exercises, and I think that I can do this time, so let's stand, please. Bow our heads. Just wanted to ask blessings of our Creator on our students, teachers, employees of the school system, the people in Citrus County, and actually the people across the world. It's a very rough time, very difficult world that we're living in today, and we need some guidance and help and blessings. Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda as recommended by the superintendent. May I have a motion for his approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Bryant, seconded by Mr. Kennedy to adopt the agenda as recommended by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you. The first citizens' comments will be reserved for comments on the items that are on the agenda. Do we have any green cards? Okay. The third item on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda with the recognition of donations. May I have a motion?
Wasn't there an item pulled from the agenda?
Thank you very much for noting
it's,
that.
item
6A9,
6A9.
6A9, right. So we'll then say the adoption of the agenda with the item 6A9 pulled from the agenda. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you. The presentations will be at 4:30. Next, we have Business and Support Services, Mr. Blocker. Okay, thank you. Call.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Himmel, school board members. I'm here to ask you to approve adding the Inverness Primary, Flow City Elementary, Inverness Middle, and Citrus High School's feasibility study to the October 23rd, 2012 workshop.
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Dorfman, seconded by Mr. Kennedy, to approve adding the Inverness Primary, Floral City Elementary, Inverness Middle, and Citrus High feasibility study to the October 23rd, 2012 workshop.
Alan, does this mean that MGT will be here for that discussion?
Yes.
Will they have already completed their study by then?
No.
They're just gonna come here and tell us what they're going to do, their scope of the project, or we're
listen to what you have
we're
to
gonna
say.
tell what we're
They're coming
going
as
to
a,
do.
yeah, it's coming as
Okay.
a discussion between them and us.
I got it, okay.
Mr. Blocker and I, and Mr. Burkholz also had several different phone conversations with them, but the key is for them to come and hear from the board, talk to the board.
Okay. So this fee here, is this just for this one visit, or do you just have that in the budget for that part of that project?
That's the fee.
For this visit.
Yes.
So they're gonna come here essentially elicit a conversation with y'all, get your ideas, your thoughts, go through the next day in a small group.
Oh,
Kind
okay.
of formalize a plan after a hearing.
Okay, so it's not just for the one meeting with us, then they'll be here for a day or two, okay, okay.
And Alan, we have, that's what we've scheduled, that meeting to follow that up, so that after the next day. So after the board direction by that, we'll kind of, the idea is to hit the ground running. I think you schedule it that way.
Right, we'll have that
Yes.
small group scheduled for the next day to kind of formulate the plan with MGT and us to set out our direction on how to accomplish that.
I'm good.
Okay.
I think MGT was hoping too in that workshop that they could have some discussion with you and possibly have a break where they could go meet as a staff and then come back and talk to you with some
Oh, wow.
ideas.
That would be great.
proposals. So if that works.
So to arrange it that way.
Do you know who's coming?
No Dodds, Cromwell.
Oh, good.
I heard back when I talked to him, which was before when you did initially, it was Joe Clark,
Oh, good.
Dodds, and either Ed Humble or the lady who did the educational suitability.
I don't remember the other ones to do.
It may not be all of them.
Okay.
Trying to schedule it, maybe like 2 of them.
Okay, but it's people who are very familiar with our facilities and they did the initial and the secondary study.
Yes,
Very good.
and they've asked us a lot of questions.
Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you.
I was wondering if we were gonna take them to Chris Trevor and show them what we got accomplished.
Oh, what
From
a
the
great idea.
MGT.
Oh, that is a great idea.
Their
It really
recommendations.
is. It's a good idea.
Yeah,
Just
you know,
a thought.
this has been one of the most effective strategies with our facilities that, I don't know, probably in the history of Citrus County School District as far as producing high-quality results for, very reasonable amount of investment. And I don't know that we would have gotten where we are today without that sort of direction. So thank you for thinking of it again.
Mr. Burkhart, number 3 on the businesses of the week.
I'm here to ask you to approve the survey recommendations for Citrus Springs Middle School, Inverness Middle School, and Lecanto High School.
I move to approve the survey recommendations for Springs Middle School, Inverness Middle School, and Lecanto High School.
Second?
It's been a move. Ms. Bryant, seconded by Mr. Kennedy, to approve the survey recommendations for Citrus Springs Middle School, Inverness Middle School, and Lecanto High School.
I just had a question about Inverness Middle School, the building 6, is that a building that would be involved in the study at all about any changes to that building, or is this a building that's just is this a building in the very front where the cafeteria is? I saw the sketch, but wasn't sure.
This is the old administration.
The old
Old
administration
administration.
in the middle of, where's the old
Yeah.
administration?
The old
Oh,
office.
over on the side, the blue side, now it's not blue anymore.
Yeah. It's actually, a roof that, all we're doing is replacing a roof that's leaked badly.
Okay. You understood what I meant by the blue side, it's not blue anymore?
Oh, me? Yeah.
She says, what's the blue side?
I understood
Inverness Middle School,
Yeah,
then you have to know
we
Inverness
know
Middle
those.
School. And the old administration is where it says Inverness Middle School on the side where the parking lot is, yeah. And now it's been converted back to classrooms.
Any other discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burkhart. Mr. Bishop, Human Resources. The goldenrod, if we take a moment to look over the goldenrod.
Ms. Bryant, did you teach Cassidy Rash?
I did. How did you know that?
Because she taught her mom too. And I think her father, and most of her aunts and
I taught Cassidy. And while you're on the subject of people I taught, Jessica Hodges, I gotta find out what's wrong with her. I taught her too.
I don't know.
Well, you need to know. It's a health issue.
But Cassidy Rash is another one of those kids that went to school here, went to college and has come back, and
Homegrown, we call them.
that's it.
We have a lot of those now.
Yeah,
Awesome child.
good
Probably an
softball player.
awesome teacher.
There's not a continuity to it. If they lived here, know the county, and then come back as teachers, it's a whole history here.
Mhm.
It's really interesting.
Ms. Hamill, Miss Edie, I never quite understand the resignation from drop. Does that mean she's finishing drop, or, okay,
I think
she's done then?
Someone told me she was working in, back in the role of a technology area. She retired as a principal for a primary school, but she continued her employment.
Okay, yeah.
She had been a technology specialist years ago.
She's been
She
working
helped us
Skyward.
with
This is-
She's
this
Skyward,
Skyward,
right,
yeah.
she's Skyward,
We needed some help for some transition with Skyward, so she agreed to stay on.
and she's leaving now?
She has, yeah, she needs to.
After Christmas break, she'll be leaving.
Okay,
Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the instructional and support personnel recommendations.
second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Deutschman to approve the instructional and support recommendations. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you. And next we have the budget update. Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you.
Just to give you a review of DOE's legislative budget request for the FEIU for next year. This is what they're talking about today and yesterday during their meetings. This is what will be going forth to the budget, to the legislature, to the governor, to start creating budget work for next year. And as you can see, a couple of highlights on the base student allocation. It's just a modest 1% increase to next year's budget from this year. Overall, it's a increase of approximately 2% in funding overall. So not a huge increase. We were certainly hoping for more, but this is the legislative budget request. If you look down the FEFP detail right above where it says total FEFP, you'll see a couple new items. Internet bandwidth access and technology tools to the tune of about $200 million worth of funding they're looking to put out there. New line items for next year's budget that they're proposing. As all y'all are aware of the new requirements and the multiple requirements of going to computers and digital and everything, it looks like they're putting off some funding out there to help with the access through the internet, and also maybe some new type of technology or hardware, software to help facilitate those type of programs. And
Are they taking it somewhere else though?
no, it looks like that's part of the increase that
Okay.
they're looking for. So that's probably the majority of the increase that we're looking at next year is dollars for technology.
Now,
This is our $1 billion increase in education.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is for next
And
year.
then they tell you where to put it.
Yeah.
And then they tell us we don't have any unfunded mandates and don't complain to them.
So this is, don't have much detail on what they're looking at and paying for this, but I would suspect the internet bandwidth access may have to do with the pipeline going up to DOE, because that's been certainly constricted over the last few years with all the more and more data that they're
and
requiring.
it's been on DOE's side, it's not been on our side.
Right. Especially during testing.
Yeah, you know, there's a guy actually outside my window every day, putting in. Putting in fiber optic cable in Inverness. And apparently that is the new technology to completely increase speed. And I know, we're not, do we have access to that technology for our district?
We are fiber optic.
Mike?
Are we fiber optic here?
He was sitting right over here.
Or
We're through Bright House right now.
Yeah, I believe Dr. G and I have talked about before, it is all fiber optic.
Is it fiber? Okay.
That was something in the last couple of years that's.
Yeah,
I
we
was
was
wondering
conversation about
If
that.
this has anything to do with our end of course
Yes,
exam.
That's what I'm thinking of, the school is fiber optic.
Kenny, I was wondering if this had anything to do, this bandwidth stuff, with the end of course exams.
I'm sure that has a lot
Yeah.
to do with it, because it's having a process from here to Tallahassee. So like I said, that pipe that used to be this big has just been constricted here because all that data is flowing through there. They don't have enough bandwidth to be able to hold it all.
When we met
I
with the
assume
governor-
that's probably some of the stuff they're looking at.
And when we met with the governor, that was one of the things we kept telling him, that, you know, you're putting all these requirements on students, testing online, and a lot of districts don't have the bandwidth to do it.
And it's bottlenecking all the way up there, so.
Well, every time we do fair, something goes down.
Oh. And again, it's not our district side on this,
Right,
because
right.
we've done a very good job at making sure we had the bandwidth within our schools and going out. Kenny, the other big thing is the elephant in the room when it comes to technology has been the 2016 digital mandate. And I know that we'll be continually going on that, but, potentially for our district, that could be a $6 to $7 million hardware cost by 2016. Is there any conversation?
Some of this may be going toward that, because in technology tools, I haven't seen the description of what of these two line items. I'm
Right.
just speculating, but there's $52 million sitting there. That may be part of what's gonna be allocated for some of those ideas.
Okay.
I did not see the description in the legislative budget request for these up to the education, so.
Because, I mean, and I know you know, that's just not a line
Absolutely.
item
If
that
you
we
see
have.
instructional materials is only a modest increase of 0.5% next year, so they're
Right.
looking at addressing some of the issues there with some of those technology needs. So, just an early look at what's being
Right.
proposed, because, December, we will start formulating our FTE calculation projections for the following year. We'll make those in December, so here's the initial look, the LBR. Next thing will be our initial run through the FTE process for the following year projections. And then the governor will come out with his budget the first part of the year, so I hate to sit here and say that we're already looking at the next year's budget, but we are. It's already, the process is
It's
already
a little
started.
early, isn't it?
No, this is typical when they come up with their LBR.
Early.
But last year, I think, with your efforts, with the superintendents, we really stayed ahead of the game as much as a district can with having some options and game plans and collaboration and dialogue. Is that still the intention to do, so that as we get through beginning of legislation session?
And we're constantly reviewing. I mean, we're looking at FTE right now, looking where we stand, because the count's coming up here in a couple weeks, so we
Right.
have to be prepared for what that's gonna tell us and what the outlook's gonna be for the following, for the rest of the year as far as FTE and how it affects our funding, so.
And the 3%, I'm assuming, is still really the biggest unknown for us. And I mean, the entire state in education.
We still have that looming over our head with.
Any new indication as to when they'll announce, or just everything's gonna be after November?
Have you, Mr. Bradshaw, have you heard anything about the lawsuit as to when the judge may come back? No.
I suspect it'll be after November 6th.
I think we're all very much suspecting that. So that's the good and the bad.
Kenny,
Ma'am?
what's our number? How did our count do this year?
Right now, we're a couple hundred down
Are we?
from where our projection was, yes. And that's why that, in the FTE week here in October is gonna really tell a story as to where we're at. Elementary's down, high school's down, middle school is pretty much right on the money.
Middle school doesn't change for some, I don't know what happens, why the teeter-totters on the
And
end.
we know elementary probably at the beginning of, in January, those numbers will start coming up. Unfortunately, the high school numbers usually drop, and they're already down right now,
Yeah.
so.
Well, a lot of that, I think, is not due somewhat to virtual schools sapping off some of the students.
Sure. So we're continually reviewing that and analyzing it and trying, and there will have to be some, potentially some changes made midstream through the year to be able to accommodate some of that. All righty?
The bandwidth, so to speak, for colleges, does that go to the same places? Is it any interference whatsoever with the K through 12 or no?
Well, you remember DOE is K through 20, so they're all funneling up to Tallahassee.
Oh,
But this is just K-12 right here, these dollars.
so there is.
But remember, the colleges and universities are always, everyone's fighting for that same dollar.
Yeah.
So there's only so much to go around, but remember, DOE's K-20, so it
Yeah,
spans
you're
the
right.
whole spectrum.
But and maybe Mr. Simon can say, but the bulk of the required testing, computerized testing, is gonna be the K through 12. More than it's gonna be the college bandwidth that's really doing that. There's more research and on-site basis.
One would make that assumption,
Yeah.
correct?
That's what I was, make sure I'm not.
Right.
Thanks, Mr. Block.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is school operations with Mr. Molden. I think Mr. Plotter's going to come up, or is it Mr. Simon's going to come up? He's going to speak about his favorite topic, school calendar options.
And to answer your question, Mr. Kennedy, that whole bandwidth is in preparation for the requirement that every assessment, as we move to Common Core, every assessment at every grade level will be computer-based assessment. That's the impact.
And the mandate of that, just to refresh us to make with that, the drop dead date for some of that.
That's 2016.
16 for what?
every Common Core assessment, and starting at grade 3 to grade 12, all assessments will be on computer.
Oh, on computer.
But the
2014 is Park when that's supposed to start taking over.
Correct, but there's a little lag between the actual implementation of Common Core and then when those assessments will be thorough through all grade levels.
I don't understand, how we're going to grade writing, actual writing that our children are doing.
Those processes are in place already. Their writing will be electronically evaluated.
And the-
Scored by a robot.
But it potentially is going to be where the students actually type it
That's correct.
into the system, and that's how the students will do it.
Third grade.
What I shared with Mrs. Powers, that when she asked about the writing, that the expectation at the end of first grade, students will be on Common Core. At the end of first grade, all students will be computer keyboard skilled.
Yep.
They're already talking about implementing keyboarding.
In first grade?
Yeah.
And when you talk about keyboarding, define keyboarding for first graders.
For the ability to maneuver, and I don't mean the
Not like what you're
keyboarding
talking
skills that your secretary would have in your office, but
Right.
that child can move, manipulate, maneuver, shift, drag, click on a keyboard, and the reality is that they're already doing that. I mean,
They are.
we see 3-year-olds that are doing that, but that's.
Our
what-
pre-Kers are using the, tablets pervasively.
Right, right.
It is a very different than those of us who took as freshmen keyboard, and on a manual typewriter, yes, I am old enough to have taken it on a manual typewriter.
Really?
Yes.
So Mr. Kennedy, before we move into calendar, you know how to hit that return bar. That-
I do, we hit that, and
Most
it was
people
hot
have-
keys, everything you had to imagine that, that
I
those
bet you
keys
never
were.
had keys go all
Yes,
the
I
way
did.
from
They stick together.
See, that would be a good time to switch from the Dvorak to the other keyboard.
I think this is a good opportunity to switch to the calendar discussion. So,
And you're the one that brought this up, and the whiteout.
Everybody in the world uses the other keyboard. Is it Dvorak the one we use or with the other one? Wait, where's the keyboard?
We use,
Or that's
We use
QWERTY.
We use a
Yes,
QWERTY.
we need to go to Dvorak.
so the calendar committee, just to bring you up where we are in this process, the committee accrued feedback from all district school sites, parents, community members. We're appreciative of Mr. Kennedy, who served on the committee that met this past month. We had the largest number of parents involved. Since I've been a part of this process, we've just had 2 individuals that were unable to make that event. In the process, at this October 9th meeting, our intent is to bring to you the 3 calendars, to give you some information as to the construction of those calendars, the rationale as to why. They'll be going out, once you approve those, should you choose to approve those today, they will go out to the schools, and they will have the required amount of time till November 14th to have both their advisory councils meet to review, discuss, vote, as well as all staff at all school sites. Then we will have that tabulation done in November and brought to you at the December meeting to review, decide, and should you choose to support the majority vote of calendar 1, 2, or 3, that'll be presented at the meeting. We defined that profile at the last meeting. We actually included your input, and I will tell you that at this point, all calendars look alike. They are triplets for the most part. And the distinguishing factor of the calendars is simply the charge that you gave the committee, and that was to look at professional development in very different ways and construct calendars that would have different approaches to those professional development days in the schools. When we divided into groups, we tried to balance the 3 teams to have elementary, middle school, high school, parent involvement, advisory council leaders involved, community groups involved. Each team shared input, and they're very brief bullets, but the conversations were much deeper than what you see here from the elementary and the middle school and high schools. Noting some recommendation. I thought it was quite interesting, that third bullet down, why are we tinkering something that works for 7 years? So, Mrs. Himmel, there's, I think, a sense of comfort in this calendar that it appears to meet the academic needs and the patterned styles of our teachers and staff that are working in our schools. We as a committee reflected, and it's interesting, with a great number of new people to the process who thought it was complex but enjoyed it. They felt as though they gained new understanding and insights into calendar. They liked the food, by the way, that was served. And
Yes, thank you, Mr. Simon.
You're welcome. And again, the
He got
collaboration.
criticized, just for a note on that, that was the only thing that was criticized the year before. And so Mr. Simon, being the ever, high achieving individual, was not going to have that on his list this year.
I was trained well, Mr. Kennedy. Starts in the home. So, we follow through on some of the directives, and again, I'm going to, Simone, if you would pass these out. I think the best way to give you an overview is to look at this one chart that looks at all 3 calendars together. Simplistic, and again, you may not see the day-to-day details, but you may get a sense of what those calendars are. Calendar 1 actually begins with teachers starting in July 31st. That's one of the few differing elements of that calendar. If you look at calendar 2 and 3, the teacher start date is the same. So I'm going to move horizontally across this chart. The student start dates for all 3 calendars are all the same, August 7th. Veterans Day, all the same, acknowledging November 11th as a student and teacher holiday. The winter holiday for student is a little different. If you notice calendar 2, the students returned January 6th, whereas the other calendars, they return on the 7th. They exit, the calendar, actually vacation begins the same day. For the teachers, likewise, 2 calendars are similar, where in calendar 1, the teacher returns on the 5th. In calendars 2 and 3, they return on the 3rd. And that first term ends all the same. Fair Week, which is spring break, all the same, and that was one of these powerful voices that were referenced from all school sites. A little bit different on Easter and the Monday that follows. Good Friday, of course, a holiday, and in Monday, calendar 1 has a holiday, calendar 2 and 3 have school days. Students' last day, all the same, May 23rd. Teacher last day, all the same, May 28th. So how are these calendars different? And this was your charge. And if I may quote you, Mrs. Deutschman, can you look at professional development? And by that I mean professional development that looks at training, whether it be what we're doing now or Common Core, and data evaluation that links to teaching and differentiated teaching as you build the calendars. So each team came up with a very different approach and a rationale and philosophy as to why. Calendar 1 committee took the approach of looking at a half day each month, excluding those irregular months in which there may be testing or holiday. Calendar 2 looked at trying to construct professional development that would be full days and not half days. And calendar 3 defined themselves as a blended model where they have some full days and some half days. Calendar 3 research prior to the meeting on Max Thompson's belief about when to actually schedule those days, with building into the calendar a schedule of majority of the professional development in the 3rd, 4th quarter of the school year around the testing window without interfering in the testing window, but springboarding into the following 14-15 school year. In examining those, when you look at calendar 1, 2, 3, the chart shows the distinctive full days. Calendar 1 has 1 full professional day. Calendar 2 has 3 full days of professional development. Calendar 2 has 3 days. Calendar 3 has 3 days for elementary, 4 days for high school that are full days. This is what's interesting and different. Calendar 1 has 6 early dismissal half days throughout the year for professional development. Calendar 2, whose belief was try not to have half-days, has only one half-day. And Calendar 3 has 5 of those half-days, again, the majority of them in the second half of the year, following the recommendations of Mr. Max Thompson. If you look at professional half-days in which there are no students, and by that we mean school would not be in session for students, and there would be half-days of professional development for teachers. Calendar 2 selected to do that after the students leave at the end of the school year. Debate, and I want you to know it was plentiful and educational discussion, debate, and comparisons of beliefs, philosophies, and ideas, and patterns of our practice, with questions such as, would those days at the end of the year be beneficial? Would they be energetic? Would teachers be on their game in gaining information? Would they be at a point in the year where energy might be too low to gain? So all these conversations took place in trying to look at 3 very different approaches. Finally, you'll notice there the Professional Development Parent Conference Day, all the same for each calendar, and the teacher work days varied for all 3 of those. And these words in this chart is more visible when you actually look at each of these calendars with the color coding to help explain. I would be remiss if I didn't, and again, she probably doesn't hear me because she's so busy. Janet Selman, who has done this for a long time, is so powerful in knowing how to organize, check, correct, ensure that we meet statute, holiday guidelines. So she is astute in going through every one of these cells on this calendar to make sure that we meet requirements and days required. So we present to you the 3 calendar, 1, 2, 3, that will be for your approval to be sent to the staff of our district to vote upon in the next, between October and November 14th.
Now that we can ask.
You may.
I just want to make a comment before I start. This was scanned in black and white,
Mhm.
and I think there's a way to scan in color.
They can be readily scanned.
Yeah, so we couldn't look at the individual details online. So I look at my agenda package online, and you even have yours on your iPad in black and white. So just for future reference.
Thank you, and I'm not sure.
Ours were in color, the one I received was.
You got it in your packet,
In the packet, yes.
online, talking about
Oh,
online.
oh, I'm sorry, yes.
And the public, a lot of people access it from online,
That's
so.
great. I'll make sure that, again, for the record, all of our scanners can scan in color. It's
You
just
know,
a code.
yeah, I didn't realize that until the other day. Someone in my own office told me that, oh, we can scan in color, you just push this button.
At no extra cost, Mr. Blocker, unless you print
You
it.
might tell us bandwidth though, and storage.
You know, before we get started, and we're gonna have this conversation about the need for professional development has increased dramatically as all these new initiatives and mandates and changes in instructional delivery model and all that come about. But having said that, we have been clear as a board for many, many years in our understanding that our parents didn't tolerate half days very well, and especially elementary school. And we've had to fight for keeping those ones at the end of each block for the purpose of grading and testing and all that. So the last one, I didn't count the one on the first, I just got to number 3, has 13 half days. I don't know how many, I can count them up quickly, I don't know, maybe you know them, 1, 2.
When you're adding that, what you're adding are the half days, the 8 half days that are final exam now, and of course exam pieces, along with
Along with.
the early dismissal of professional
So we
development.
have 8 plus 6. So one has 14, one has 13, and one just has 9.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think 2, that was purposeful on 2's part, that they were trying to create one without, and I think actually that particular group had the most parents. I can't say that for sure, but it had certainly quite a bit of parent representation, and I think that's where that conversation came out of.
So that would be a concern, because this board has had the philosophy and belief for many years that half-days, while many districts use them and they use them wisely, are not what we've ever done before. As far as, we had half-days years ago, and we moved away from them, and then when we put them in for testing, we kind of made a promise that we were not gonna add any more half-days. So, while the calendar committee maybe doesn't know that, part of our role here is to tell you whether or not this fits with the board's philosophy. And so I'm just asking the rest of you, have you changed your mind?
No, that when you have half-days, you never get the hours you think you're going to get out of a half-day. There's always something that flows over into like if the students are there in the morning, it flows over to the afternoon. It's never works well enough. So I do not like half-days.
Well, and that's where I think if you look at calendar 2, there was, I believe, only 3 that fell into a traditional day. The other ones were during test days.
Right, and it seemed like that
And
made
that was,
sense.
and that was, again, very purposeful to try and minimize as much as possible, because the thought was, when we asked, okay, how much development time would you have after the last student left? It really also became very small. And it really was not a half day, it was just a couple hours. And so that was certainly a conversation that I know, because I served on 2. So it doesn't mean that that's a perfect calendar, it just means that was something that we did discuss for that very reason, because it.
And the public and the parents don't understand that 2 half-days don't make 1 whole day. We can't just do
Right.
that.
Right.
We get paid and funded for the whole day, and if we choose to have school for a half day, we can dismiss the students, but we're still paid for a full day of school. If we have 2 half-days and then call it a day off, we don't get paid
It's
for
not
those
counted
days.
as a school, and again,
Doesn't count,
that's
right.
not just pay, the most important part of that is
School day.
the number of hours or minutes of instruction, particularly for a high school student to be awarded credit. So that's the challenge when you do full days of staff development. You can't do too many or you lose the required minutes, you lose the 180 days. So it really is difficult. What the committee did note, and I believe was Committee 1 research, all the high-performing schools this year, and all of them have early dismissal days, and they're all have some sort of, they're not all full days, they're half days because of that reason.
Right.
And so it's not the half day of being a burden to the parent, it's a half day to ensure that we're providing some instruction to students.
Well, unless we're willing to provide childcare at no cost, it is a burden to parents.
Well, I think full day or half day, it would not, if you look at it in the essence of it, even a full day of professional development, someone is caretaking for the child.
Well,
So,
the kids have 180 days, that's not changing.
correct.
So we're not suggesting that they go to school 179 days or 178 days. So they're having 180 days, of which those 180 days, 13 or 14 of them will be half days. So that's a lot. I still think that's a lot. I mean, the expectation is that those days are necessary. When I went to the high school last week, one of the things that they talked about is having the time to do their day-to-days. And that they were pulling out teachers for half a day once a month, which is a big expense for substitutes. But because those kids have substitutes, maybe are they getting high quality instruction that day? I don't know. And if they had more professional development time, it would be very beneficial for their ability to learn and understand the needs of their own students so that they could help all the students. Is there a way we can accomplish that other than half days? Maybe, I don't know, but the Max Thompson model, I remember, specifically said that the professional development is best done towards the end of the school year, where teachers are introduced to a new concept or new methodologies, and they have a chance to kind of try it out during the end of the school year, so that when school starts up in the fall, they're ramped up and ready to go, rather than have that concept start at the beginning of the year or the end of the year, and then it takes a long time to implement it and get it going.
And that's why I pulled up calendar 3, who has actually 2 full days and 2 half-days in that latter half of the year. And that was their intent. And Mrs. Deutschman, I agree, it's a difficult, and the committee it's challenging to serve all, because ultimately the problem is that we are fracturing time in teams right now at a cost for substitutes, at a cost for learning, and how we're delivering professional development and data analysis.
Well, then maybe we need to think about how we manage students on campus if we have half-days for instruction. And maybe we could say, any student that wants early release is welcome to be released early, and every student that wishes to stay will have some sort of enrichment activity, like a field day or something. You know, if you do 1, 2, you only have 5, so maybe you could do 4.
But then who does that? If we've got if we've got.
Well, you have substitutes, so we have people that we hire, that we
Okay.
allow to take charge of our students.
And you maybe substitutes or alternative
Yeah.
staff, I mean, or
You know, we used to do,
non-instructional staff.
we have lost all of those enrichment activities that we used to do. Remember Earth Day and Super Science Saturday and all those things? You know, if we could find ways, especially at the elementary school level at least, for providing some sort of activities at a very low cost to us, to allow all of the teachers to meet and do whatever it is that they want to do, professional development or data days or whatever they feel they need to. But we don't burden the parents by sending them home on a bus at 1 o'clock when the parent has to work until 5. And then somehow just find a way to do that.
And that could be an option that I think could serve many. And again, it would have to be detailed out depending on the number of days and the calendar. I would probably picture that in the high school arena there would not be as many students that would be sticking around the high school campus for
Right, and
that.
I would say we would,
It'd probably be more
we would
elementary and some
provide that in
middle.
elementary school, for students that didn't have anybody to pick them up. And, and the busing, we wouldn't want to double bus them, come bus them at 1 and bus them at 3:30, but we might give them the option of, it might be something to think about.
Right, and I think each of the calendars, all the calendars have half-days now, so if that's something, we would probably have to move rapidly in January to start examining that and planning for it and involving school teams and how that would work if its intention is to put that in place for the 13-14 school year.
And it might just be for those extra days.
Correct.
Here's the other thing, the calendar doesn't have any options that don't have at least 9 half-days. So we don't even have one here that only has 8.
Correct. Even our current calendar has.
9.
And the big challenge also that, and I think we talked about it at our last meeting, was that we moved from 26 or 24 hours of professional development time to 30. And finding those, unfortunately, I think for a lot of, and again, I was on calendar 2, so our effort was to try and minimize that.
See, now you tell us.
But on calendar 3, and 1, they were accomplishing, I think, those extra hours through the half-days.
Right. I understand. It was very difficult to get parents to participate on the calendar. And I think people don't understand the calendar. They
Oh,
don't
no,
have-
it was, yeah.
And
you're right.
parents just are, they see the calendar and they react to it, and it's too late by that time, so.
But you are right about the half days, because many people are in the community, and probably some of our staff, they feel like when you have a half day, it's a waste of money because we're transporting kids. They don't realize that counts for a whole day.
Right.
Mr. Simon, the 2 half days at the end of every quarter. I mean, we've got 2 at the very end of the year. Maybe there's a flexibility thing that we could take back
That's interesting.
and talk to schools about maybe giving up one of those days at the end of the 9 weeks.
Yeah, because if
Maybe
kids
an
aren't
option.
being promoted to the next class, so it's not as critical.
Say that again, please.
The last 2 half days at the end of the year.
Okay, on
We know
that.
those are exam days, and we know the high school students are probably gonna be released anyway, but, maybe take those 2 half days and move them somewhere else. To have less half days in the school year. I mean, if we go back and talk to the schools about that.
That's a really good idea.
In some districts, just so that you know, that they don't, and again, every district is different in Florida, and I say this just to show you how each plans differently. In those districts that have high school, the high schools are the only ones that have half-day early release. The elementaries have full days. We talked about that in the past. We talked about the equitable opportunities for staff. So does that mean that the staff in the elementary school do not have the opportunities for evaluating student work, grading, and planning that the high school teacher now has? So, but that's contractually built into some districts such as Santa Rosa and Okaloosa. But they have different models at different grade levels. It's not all the same.
And Mr. Simon, I don't know if you recall, I threw that out because I thought that was worthy of conversation. And I would have thought that I just done the worst possible thing by throwing out an idea of having different calendars for different grade levels,
Well, I know Alachua
particularly
County-
meaning high school.
I think Alachua has a half day every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. Some
Every
schools have every Wednesday, some schools have once a month. Yeah. So it is, so at this point, we have these three designs.
Do they perform better than Citrus County?
No,
Okay,
Alachua
then.
does.
Well, but there was, and I don't know that this is correct, and I think
St.
you
John's
did it, but
does.
there was, one of the people came and showed that the top 5.
St. John's, Seminole, Santa Rosa, Sarasota, all, I think there's one more that has the continuous pattern of half days that do outperform us. So,
And I
but
didn't
again, I would,
subscribe to that because that was why I was on the
I
other.
would caution.
But they were very strong that committee believed in that philosophy based on the high-performing districts.
And I would caution us to link an immediate conclusion that says, because you have had half days, this leads to your high performance. I think that may be an erroneous conclusion. Could be, but it would take study to really prove that. But it's interesting, I think the right word would be, it's interesting to notice how those high-performing schools, A school districts, have multiple professional development days. And as you said, Mrs. Deutschman, earlier, it's not just for professional development, whether it be Common Core, FCAT 2.0, it really is also woven into it the assessment and analysis of student work and what interventions need to be put in place to ensure that Thomas is successful on his FCAT test 2.0 test that will take place in spring.
Not enough professional development to help you there.
I did not say that, Mr. Kennedy.
You have somebody comment.
But I do think that to me, what was key wasn't as much the half days, but it was professional development. That in and of itself was, I think, the key to that, to those high-performing districts.
And again, we are in this transition to Common Core. We are really trying to figure it out. How can a calendar match it? So again, 3 teams came up with 3 different responses, and we will, with your recommendations, offer it to, and then you receive those that and I am going to project. In the past, we always had one that seemed to be more popular. I'm going to say that may not be the case this time. We're going to get some distributed voting responses that is not going to have a strong, overwhelming majority for one of the 3.
You're trying to say we're gonna have to decide.
I'm going to say it's going to be pretty close.
Right.
But it's odd that this is the first year that when I looked over them, I had a strong preference for one of those.
Well,
So instead of not having a preference, the one just seemed to fit in my idea of a teacher better.
Well, and interestingly, there definitely was strong feelings, it seemed like, with each group. It wasn't, but that brought up a question that I had said. It didn't go over as quite as I thought broad thinking as I was trying to accomplish, and that was to say, could we say this is your number 1 choice, and a non-quasi, here would be your second choice if you were to have one. The idea being for us to say, okay, if we only had 1/3 of the people plus 1 that chose one calendar, was there a second choice that was predominant? And was that similar? Let's say, in 2 and 3, there are some similarities. I was trying to understand what maybe if there was some thinking. But union representation did not feel like that was meeting their contract, and so therefore, they were not for that.
Well, there's very limited wiggle room here. They all start in at the same time, so you can't decide on that basis. And the
Yeah.
holidays are all the same days, you can't decide on that basis. And if you don't understand the half-day issue, or you don't like the half-day issue, that will make you choose one or the other.
One versus, because two of them have more half-days than the third, so, yeah. But again, I'm interested to see how will be received, and again, ultimately, you have the option to, when it comes back, to look at them, to make recommendations, to make, it is the board's recommendation to the superintendent onto the calendar while you.
So let me ask that question if I can. Mr. Bradshaw, and you can, so we get these back with a choice. What direction, what flexibility does this board have in then making a calendar choice? Do we have to go by one of those choices? Of those calendars contractually? With any of our union, could we, after we get done with these, could we choose an entirely different calendar, or could we, in essence, pick and choose from the calendars and come up with a calendar and vote on and choose that calendar?
We've done it, but we actually, after we did that, we sent it back out for approval. Because we're supposed to have a vote on it, but ultimately, forget about the contract, statutorily, the school board sets the school calendar. That's
That
our
was my understanding.
statutory requirement and our job. So we have it in a local contract, how the calendar will be developed and how we'll get input or selection from our employees, but they don't have the final say. It's not their statutory duty to set the calendar, it is our statutory duty. So we have to follow the language in our contract, but we ultimately are the ones responsible for the calendar, the school calendar.
But we love them and we like their input.
Well, we've changed them before. Last year we
Oh,
sent
yeah.
it back, and I think was it last year or the year before, we added our own calendar because there was something in there about it that
2 years ago.
the holidays. But I would prefer that we wouldn't send the calendar back after we've asked everybody to approve one and then say, well, we don't like your choice, so now we're gonna overrule you.
Right.
I mean, I think it would be better that we sent out a calendar that, was in agreement with our philosophy, and one that we said, if they voted for this calendar, then we would have no problem approving it. And if there's a calendar in here that you would not approve, then you probably need to speak up now.
And that's I think the phrase that I've offered you in the past, and I think it was, there's calendar 1, 2, and 3. The question is, can you live with, as board members, can you live with any of these calendars becoming the 12, 13, 14 school calendar? And if you cannot, I think Mrs. Joyceman is correct. It is, raise that question out.
I personally can't live with calendar 1, and I'll tell you why. There's one full day for professional development, that's it, in the whole calendar. And there's 6 early dismissal days, which gives us a total of 14.
The fact that it starts for teachers to come back on July 31st.
I have
is
a
gonna
problem
kill-
with that.
Well, we told them that was gonna kill their calendar anyway, because no one was gonna vote for a calendar that said they're coming back in July.
And I'm in agreement with both of you. Number 1 is one that I don't
Yeah.
like at all.
I don't take that.
It's the one that I think the least of.
And I don't know how we got into this middle of the week business, and I know it works for kindergarten in particular, they love that. But at one time, the board also had adopted a philosophy that we would never start school before the second Monday. That the second Monday would be the earliest we would ever start, and we got away from that the last couple of years when we went to a full week holiday and Thanksgiving. I mean, you can't have both because it doesn't fit. You can't count out the number of days backwards from Christmas break, so,
But if I may interject, the high schools, and you remember this, Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
rang loudly, all three, that the starting on a Wednesday was, and again, I don't know if you mean this in terms of starting, was a powerful, positive influence on students, particularly when it came to their ability to work through schedule conflicts so that when Monday came, academic focus was 100%.
And elementary seemed to talk about for example, the kindergarten,
Yeah,
Right.
that worked out well for it starting on a Wednesday. I was surprised parents were actually as strong as the educators about the Wednesday start, and that was pretty much, I think,
That
across
was,
the board.
it was.
Calendar One kind of had to try and sneak theirs starting in
Who
ahead.
does calendar one people?
Well,
But I was
as a
surprised by
father,
that, because I frankly.
all my
would
children
agree
did a
with
great
you,
job.
and
I think
I
they
was
did too.
surprised.
Here's the thing is that, they're not privy to the last, 10 years of
Right.
board philosophy and decision and all of that. So what they asked them to do, and I'm fine with that. But I would say this, if calendar one passed, I would really have a hard time voting to support it. And I just,
I would agree.
so now we got two, does anybody else? Three, so.
And actually,
Well, but to remind you, our contract language says that you may charge the committee to come up with 2 or 3 calendars. It does not mean to be 3. And I remind you, Mrs. Joyce, from the one year that we ended up with 2, you want to know why we had 2 and not 3. So, and again,
She's like that.
there's, some of us have history as well and remembering. So I would guide you to say, if you choose, I think it's important now, because then it becomes pretentious to say we're giving you 3 to vote, but we really don't want, and we're not going to agree to 1. And I think it'd be genuine in your desire now to clarify the choices for all of us.
one is gonna have a tough sell anyway. I will be very surprised if one came to anywhere near the top. I could be wrong.
Well, you could be wrong, because I will tell you that when you go, even to advisory council meetings and the principals present them, sometimes they have a different understanding of why one calendar was created over another. Because they don't come here and sit and listen to all the conversation either, so. If you guys don't want to support calendar one and say we reject it as an option, I think we need to take a vote on that. Right?
I agree, yeah.
Okay.
It's something I would support, so it's not fair to say,
So
here
we
it is,
have
a calendar.
calendar 2 and 3. Do we want to send it back and ask them to come up with a third option with no half days? Or do we want to, are we happy with 2 and 3 and we can live with either one?
For me, just for what it's worth, my feeling is if for some reason calendar one came back, I would probably have a problem with it. And so I would be saying, we'd be just having a conversation about not accepting it or modifying it. So that being the case, if we're trying to avoid that, then I would agree we have to then remove it. On the other hand, do we do away with the intent of asking them to come up with an option that they did through the calendar committee process? Are we doing anything by taking away from that process, by removing it ahead of time? And I'm not sure I know the answer to that right
The
now.
answer's simple. It's really up to us in the end. So if we can't live with the calendar, we're not going to approve it. There's no point in sending it out for the employees to vote on. If in the end we say we don't support it, we're not going to vote it, we're going to send it back. So let's not do that.
Then I can go.
So the question is then, do we want to ask for a third calendar that has only the half days that we've had in the past and no more, no additional ones as an option? Because that's been our philosophy and our belief for many years.
Well, either we could go with the 2, or could you assemble simply the group for calendar 1 to come up with another one?
And it's a half-day issue, I think, that all of us don't want.
The rationale for calendar 1, I think that would be a difficult request, because their desire was to build a calendar that had monthly half-days. So for me to ask them to build a calendar that does not have monthly half-days, and the whole premise was monthly half-days, I'm not sure that there would be resolve to that. So I'm wondering, and again, I don't know your decision, I'm wondering maybe we just move forward with calendars 2 and 3.
1 year, and I don't know if we were board members or what, but 1 year we approved the calendars, no half days, and then we came back and added half days to it.
We've done
Because I don't think people vote on these because of half days, I think they vote on them because of the dates and
But the half-days became an issue when they started becoming numerous.
Right, and that's when the board came back and said, we're gonna take these out, put it on the calendar, and then I think the board came back and added a few half-days in there.
Well, we got into the testing issue with the block schedule. Block schedule kind of is driving the half-day testing window schedule.
If we're under no contractual obligation to have anything more than 2 calendars, then I think and we all have agreed that calendar 1 is not one that any of us would live with, then I think then we just should remove that
Straightforward
one.
for the 2.
Yeah.
And make a
just
motion
give-
and approve
just
it
make
to
2
go back out. Ms. Deutschman, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just,
Would, Mr. Kenny, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I have a question
Oh,
before he does that. Are we gonna rename them?
Yeah.
Just say calendar 2.
It'll get too confusing at that point.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve calendars 2 and 3 and reject calendar 1 to send out to, for approval, and keeping the names as they are.
I'll second that, and I would send our special thank you to calendar committee 1. So hard. But
It wasn't that they didn't do what we
They
asked.
did
Right.
We
exactly
just
what we
didn't like what
And I
they
think that's important that they hear, that you gave them a charge and challenge, and they met
They
it.
did it.
While it may not, and again, we talked about, if you went back and looked at the beliefs, we talked about community values. What is the capacity of the community to meet that? So when we talked about how this may be a different challenge and charge for the community to accept, because it has a different,
yeah, I don't think you can go from,
And when we got to look at it, we didn't like it.
well, we can't add 6 additional half-days. That's almost something that you really have to work at over.
And
a
those
while.
full day professional days are huge. They are just huge.
Huge. You can really do a good job on a full time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, only having one is just not enough.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Kenny, second by Ms. Deutschman, to approve the 2013-2014 school calendar options 2 and 3, to reject option number 1, and to send the 2 options with the same name, calendar 2 and 3, out to the schools for approval. Or vote, excuse me, for a vote. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you.
Mr. Simon, I do want to just publicly make sure that it's said, you facilitate an amazing meeting. You facilitate collaboration from every stakeholder in that room. You make sure that every voice is felt to be an important, and I just cannot thank you enough, because I believe that the success often just comes out by you bringing us together. Now it's the 2nd year I've experienced that, and you only got better. You brought food.
thank you. And again, I just acknowledge, we have many, when Mrs. Himmel asks, what is it that, she says it, what is it that defines our district, whether it be academic achievement or decision-making, it's highly committed staff. And so we had representation of highly committed staff that helped make this process. And again, while there may be disappointment in their design, I think there's an understanding as to why. So thank you. And we will return then in December with that information and the results.
So we can just go there. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Simon. Well. Okay, Floral City is not here yet, we're not yet at 4:30. Would you like to do the proclamation for Red River Week, or we can go on with something else if you're not ready for that?
We've got a few more people.
A few more people, okay. Then we'll go ahead and go to the minutes, approval of the minutes. Move approval.
Second?
Move, by Ms. Bryant, second by Mr. Kennedy, to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you. Okay. Would you like to do this? Yes.
I just want to remind the board, we have our organizational meeting, and that we'll also have our Citrus County School Board Leasing Corporation meeting on that day also.
And what time is it on the
So, we
organizational?
did that at 6?
4 o'clock? 4 o'clock for organizational? Okay. And leasing sometime after that?
Immediately after.
Immediately after that,
Done
okay.
in the past, so
Okay.
just to put that on your radar.
Okay.
Basically, the election of the officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, board members' committee reports and any other business. We can have that. Mr. Kennedy, would you like to?
I want to try and share something. We'll see if the gentleman, no, leave that on, gentlemen, if you would. Hopefully, we're gonna see if this works for us. This, my son came home the other day, and yeah, I have it on mine, so I'm able to do it from here. My son comes home the other day, and he's taking geometry, and we have no clue how to help him. So one of the cool things was his teacher sends home a video. Now, his teacher is both in the iPad pilot program, but also teaches 8th grade who aren't. So she can send this through the iPads, or she just sends it to those that don't have iPads in the other classes, sends it as a link to help them. Because again, we can't help them. So an example of that, and we'll hopefully see, is the teacher's voice is actually playing. And
Show that this length here, CF, is just as long
And
as this.
this is actually their homework that they are going to have at home, and she is actually walking them through every step of how to do
That's
it.
what we're building up to. Okay, step 1, we look at our givens.
I was
First, we
just
do
at home.
information for givens.
They do this at home. They take this home with them. If they're in the iPad program, of course, they just have it with them. If they just have internet access at home and they're not one, all they do is they are just they get to play this. The beauty is you can play it over and over. I will tell you, by the time I got done watching it, I actually could almost figure out how to do it. And I just really thought that this was a great example to show how we've talked about flipped classrooms. Some teachers send this ahead for the work they'll do the next day, and then the teacher ends up doing the work with them as homework during class. That's the concept of a flipped classroom. But the idea that your own teacher's voice doing these videos, it was extremely helpful as a parent who can't always do the math, and it was certainly helpful for them to have them. In one case, or I know in multiple cases, the student will say, I'm having trouble with this one. She will do it in front of them, record it, and then just email it to them. So not only did she do that problem with them, but they have a record of that they can take home. We talked about keeping learning going on when we have subs in the classroom. Some of the teachers are using this so that then they play these clips during the class time when they're at their data meetings. And again, rather than have a sub that's maybe doing a little more busy work with them, they're actually able to do continual, learning. So I just wanted to share that with you. I just happened to use on there, we didn't spend big money to do that. We just have a very inexpensive program that I put onto there called Air Server, which allows me to use our iPads to show it on our system. And so
And there wasn't additional work for the teacher. She recorded it while she was teaching it in the class.
she can do that, and she
Yes,
does
sir.
that, and
Yeah.
and then sends it right to them.
But some of the time, they do
Thank
record
you.
their lessons separately.
Yes.
But I don't think anybody minds doing that.
Oh, no, it's that, and, oh my gosh, no, they, in fact, I was looking to see if they're out there, I know of one of our teachers that does that purposefully if they know they're gonna be out of the classroom. They actually record themselves and have the substitute play that back so that they actually are the ones giving the instruction. I thought it was a neat thing. So the only other thing I wanna share is a quote that I had seen recently, and it maybe one you already know, but it's from Albert Einstein, who says, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. And I know that this board has constantly tried to keep imagination through music, art, PE, And Superintendent, I'm sorry, Ms. Hemmel, I don't mean to exclude you in that. And I just believe that when you look at our data, the part that's not there is how we do try to stimulate that imagination as part of this. So, and then the last thing I want to just mention is there anything new to talk about with the .25 for us to promote anymore, to have more dialogue with, I know Mr. Blocker and Mr. Blocker actually, who's out of the room right now, he attended an educational forum recently where he had an opportunity to talk out about that. I know Superintendent Hell, there he is.
I have my column ready to go.
Okay, excellent. So if there's anything else, I just think this is probably crunch time for us to make sure we talk to our groups and about
There hasn't been a lot of interest, has there?
There has not.
It's interesting, I don't know why, maybe because there's so many amendments, we're just overwhelmed with all of it?
It is the one concern that I have is that I regularly hear vote no on all the amendments. I believe the way it shows on the ballot, we're at the end of the amendment. So my only fear is that people in voting no, 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 we've got to make sure they remember when they get to that very last, which is not an amendment, a state amendment, we would like them to vote yes. So we do need to make sure that they understand how their ballot works. And Ms. Powers, that's all I have.
Okay, and Mr. Blocker, you are sending some points, talking points to all of us, or points about the .25, so,
Upon your request, I have to send them out to, if you want me to send them
yeah,
out
to all board
Please do.
members, yeah, please, so we make sure that we all, know what might be
We say the
asked
same
of us.
thing and we're,
Yeah, and that is a concern, Mr. Gibbs, you're talking about, because those people who deal with making up the ballots and being aware of the ballots, say just what you're saying, they're worried about the .25 at the end, someone going down just marking no because they wanted to mark no on the above
Yeah.
ones. So that is a concern, so we need to,
I need to make
press
sure
that.
my column, I point out that it's not an amendment, that it's,
That you were right.
okay, I'll,
Right.
yeah,
so you know.
I will.
Ms. Deutschman.
Well, I've been busy all last week as you all were going to our school improvement plan visits. The thing, more than one, I did it as a walking tour instead of a reading tour, because we already knew the plan. And I was really happy, Mr. Simon, that the schools only had 2 goals for the most part. I said, I'm so glad you didn't do what I'm writing. But I keep seeing these commonalities between our school district and, as I say, the study of the 5 highest performing countries. And I wanted just to share again with you what I actually physically saw or read or heard about, that how we are more like the countries that have the highest performing schools in the world. And that I'm tired of hearing about how our students don't perform as well as students internationally, because that's not, first of all, that's not true, number one, and that's not known, because the NAEP scores and the PISA scores, which are compared internationally, are only reported on a statewide basis. We don't get our individual Citrus County scores for the students. There's no sampling of students who take those tests. And our students that are performing at the level they are on FCAT would probably rise to the top of all the students in Florida. So if we can pull those scores out, you would probably see that the students in Citrus County are highly competitive with the students in the other parts of the world, not just necessarily Florida. Because where are we now in test scores in this country? It depends upon which data you're looking at, but I even think the improvements to minority students and ELL students, I think we're second. Fourth in reading. Mm-hmm. So it really is astounding. So some of the commonalities that I consistently saw from school to school to school, you know, and part of this is some things we can't control. Our population of students is very similar. We don't have a lot of ELL students. We're not dealing with a 60 or 70% minority population that comes to us with parents that don't speak English at home and that sort of thing. So there's something there we can't control, but it is part of what makes us similar to some of those other countries that have very low immigration statistics. But the one thing that was consistent, including the high school, who's really desperately trying to get up to speed on this, was the student study teams in the day-to-days. That those were, they thought, some of the most critical pieces that they were doing in their schools, middle school in particular, that I went to. They thought they made it up. And they had, by focusing on level 1s and 2s and 5s, because they said, we just figured we had to do something. And the high school is trying to figure out how does that work in a 1,600 student body with, students that have all different teachers. But they've made a strong commitment to studying data and making sure that they identify every at-risk student, even students that come in during the year or students that maybe weren't obvious to them in the past. They don't have the data from 8th grade. They don't know if they were attending primary school when they come. And so they're really digging deep in the data. And I think a little bit of the frustration with the Skyward is it's a little bit of a barrier at this point because some of that information is not accessible as easily as they would like it to be. Again, the commitment to children, including a strong social safety net. I heard that today. We had a perfect example of how schools go out of their way to make specialized programs to meet the needs of individual students. Identifying potential dropouts, especially by 9th grade, and credit recovery programs. Again, we heard about that today. We saw evidence of that, especially at the high school level, but in the middle school we've seen it with the E2020 labs and some of the things that the students have said about. I'm so excited because now I can go on to high school with my fellow students. The relationship of teachers with their students. 9th grade academy, the same homeroom teacher for 4 years at Citrus High School. They're doing that. Are they doing it at Lecanto or Christopher River?
Yes.
Same model. Okay.
Christopher.
Ms.
And then-
Grossman, can you take a break for a second? I want you to say
Yes.
something.
What?
These are all teachers and staff from
Oh.
Coral City Elementary.
Oh,
I would like not to repeat the whole thing,
Okay.
okay? But maybe you could tell them what you're talking about because they're part of the reason
okay.
where we are.
Miss Reed knows what I'm talking about. I came in. I was at your school and we did the review of your school improvement plan. I don't know, last week. And one of the conversations that we have, especially about Floral City Elementary School, is you defy the statistics and you defy the pattern of learning that other schools experience with students that have a high socioeconomic population. And so what I was sharing here are the things that I have learned from my own study, and I've spent the last 6 months, my house looks like, I don't know, I crawl over piles of books and stuff about trends in education and also how the other 5 highest performing countries in the world, their educational systems measure up, and how we measure up to them. Because we constantly hear about how our students are not competitive with international students and international test scores. And what I'm telling you is that that's not true, especially for Citrus County. You cannot tell by any of these test scores how Citrus County students perform because it's not reported for Citrus County, it's only for the state of Florida, number one. The other thing is that our students are performing at a high level that is comparable to the highest performing students in the state, which means that they're performing at the highest level in the United States, which means that they're performing at the highest level internationally. So, I think you can all take credit for that because your students are the ones that are actually doing that. But what I was telling them is the commonalities between the characteristics of these other high-performance countries, their school systems. How do they compare? How does Citrus County compare? And we talked about the commitment to the day-to-days and the student study teams. And I believe Floral City Elementary School, actually, we're the ones who invented that. You all first decided to come together as teams and look at each individual student on a regular basis and look at their student performance data and talk about, okay, what do we need to do about this? And we're responsive to every single student. And that's why you've had such great success. Small schools that are personalized and individualized, well, that really explains you guys completely. But we try to do that with our 9th grade academies at the high school level by making those relationships with teachers important. The frequent diagnostic informative assessments. Boy, every place I've been the last couple of weeks, everybody's talking about clickers, about how effective they are as a diagnostic tool on the spot right now. Even at the high school level, they're saying the kids really have loved them in geometry. They're using the clickers. It's been a very effective tool, and when we talk about them to other counties, they go, what do you do? We don't know what that is. High quality teaching and strong school performance require effective leadership, and leadership really matters. That's one of the largest messages besides the professionalism of teachers. Leadership matters is what is pervasive in all of these other high performing schools around the world. And I think that the leadership that you have at your school is a prime example of that. And she should take great credit and pride for all of your accomplishments. And also the district has made a very strong commitment to professional development in Max Thompson. Everywhere you go, you hear, I'm with Max Thompson, we're doing EQs, we're doing this, we're doing that, and the artifacts, that's a new word now, everybody's got the artifacts. As a matter of fact, Inverness Primary School was telling me how they sent out a team of teachers with cameras, and they would go around to they do walkthroughs in all the other classrooms in the school and take pictures of artifacts of student work or teacher work, examples of how these are good practices, and then sharing them with the rest of the teachers on staff. And it's been a very effective technique in helping people understand what that looks like. How does it work? A culture of continual improvement. Going back to the days of data not guesswork, which was patterning Edward Deming of quality management. I mean, we really were on the forefront of all of that. Sharing best practices and principals meetings and discussions about what's working, what's not working. Again, one of the interesting sort of ahas that the high school got is they hired 2 primary school reading teachers and have had phenomenal success with intensive reading at the high school level, because elementary school teachers know how to teach reading. You understand phonics, you understand when there's a problem with a student who is having difficulty reading, but they're 9th or 10th graders, and those teachers don't have those strategies. So again, that sharing has been like really wonderful. And our district goals are increasing our graduation rate, numeracy and literacy in elementary school. I mean, again, you guys focus on that all the time. Building goodwill. I think we're doing that. And that the schools and the teachers both buy into the initiatives of Citrus County. I haven't heard anybody say they don't like Max Thompson, or they don't like this, or they don't like that as far as the strategies. So it's everybody kind of has joined forces in saying this is what we believe and this is what we are going to do, and everybody is working tirelessly. It's amazing the energy. I was walking through Central Ridge the other day with Principal Miss Simon. I said, you know, the teachers have to be on their game now, 100%. There's 5 different things going on in every classroom all the time, and there was a second, do these kids ever misbehave? You can. But you don't see it anymore. I mean, the classroom is so different, and it's so intense, and you all are so very, very gifted and talented in what you do. And a strong mentoring program for teachers, and I think we believe and support that too. So I was just sharing that in general. It's just funny that you guys have to watch. But it really describes the way you guys do your job. And it also gives us reason and rationale for the success of our students. It didn't just happen. We didn't just get lucky. It was a huge amount of effort on everyone's part and a belief. And again, it goes back to leadership, commitment, and that everybody is working in the same direction at the same time. So it's pervasive through our whole school district. So that's my report.
And I wanted to say one thing, that I had an opportunity to talk at the community conversation on education, and it was Ms. Deutschman that made sure to prep me and fill me up. And she gave me one quote, and it goes along this, and that talks about encompassing of what we know already, but it says, there is no country that leads the world's educational performance that has implemented any of the major agenda items that dominate the educational reform agenda in the United States, and I would say in Florida, such as the charter schools, the voucher schools, or that support privatization of education. And neither has student performance data to reward or punish teachers or principals been used. And I'm sure Ms. Deutschman can tell me where I know that came from, but I thought that was very powerful. No one else is doing that.
Mark Tucker, who was the one who did put the study together, these countries. It also had to do with computerized testing and multiple choice exams, which no other country says is an effective way to measure student performance, and you know that. You know that better. You could write the book. But you still find a way to help kids be successful in that venue. So, thank you.
Say something, we're almost there.
No, I won't.
Go ahead, we'll about to finish up and then we'll call.
All right. I came here and with the children and their art teachers. And it was awesome. You should have seen those children smile. When they put up their little art pictures and stood beside them and people took their pictures. And I told the teachers and anybody else who would listen, we're for art. We're for music. We're for ROTC. We're for all this stuff. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And our buildings just are flaming. They're flaming. Yeah. And then I went to 6 SIPs. School improvement plans? Okay, school improvement plans. That's what I went to. And we did a lot of walking around and looking. Oh, awesome. I love going to the primary schools and seeing those children write in, like, I don't know, kindergarten children writing. I miss the cookies and the milk and the naps. They are writing.
They need Jell-O anymore for the letter J.
Do we have any kindergarten teachers in here? Is it 5 sentences?
Oh,
That by
that's
the end of the year, that's
remarkable.
just remarkable.
It is. Oh. So anyway, good week. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Tomorrow I'm going to visit.
Okay.
Good luck.
And I think all of us visited the schools and looked at the school improvement plans and what Ms. Deutschman was saying, throughout each one, I could hear continuity.
Yeah.
Very
And
clear.
very clear. And the statistics, the information, the hard numbers used and plans made to continue something that needs to be continued, to improve on what needs to be improved. There was always the evaluation of what we're doing, now what should we do, how do we accomplish this, what we should do to accomplish the next thing, so continual evaluation. And also to a counselor's heart, I heard what you also mentioned about the social safety net. The schools have, and I was at one school in particular, and I kept asking them, what happens when this student who doesn't show up to school very often, what do you do to try to get that student in? And they said, well, we do this, and then I would think, well, do you do that? Yes, we do that. Everything I thought of, do you do? They said, yes, we do. And that was impressive, that they followed all the methods, all the paths to be able to get that student back in school. Very impressive. So all the reviews impressed me, and particularly when you say writing, I was thrilled. I was thrilled with the
Everybody's
writing
writing,
that was, what was going on. Very good writing. And I think it
Bringing up for keyboard.
we'll do that too. But
I wouldn't put you through asking that,
But
Ms.
I was
Powers.
thrilled that it wasn't, it would not be, it would be, or the thumbs are difficult to take. They hit too many keys at one time. But some of the small children can do that even so. And Hernando Elementary, I was very pleased with the writing, the printing, the writing, what they were doing. You could read it, it was clear.
Yes.
And I kept going down the halls reading things because it was so clear. And some of the other schools the same, but at the elementary level, at that kindergarten level, I could read what was on that wall. I was a happy person when I left there, so thank you very much. And now we'll move on. And we have Floral City Elementary School recognition.
Before we do that, I just want to, come on down, Kathy. And I think the board's all aware that in the last few days, and probably by the end of the week, our teachers have to experience the BAM data that's come in from the state. No one from the state level, from the governor down, can ever tell me how that improves student achievement. So we've made our plan a little bit different than what we submitted, but there was a paragraph in there that said something about the superintendent may, and that's all I had to read. So, and a man asked me the other night, he said, y'all have got 59, 60%, some schools are higher with free reduced lunch, how do you continue to do what you do? And I told them that I just believe that the teachers, the support staff, the principals, directors, all the way up to my office, it's got to be about the heart. Because with the things that we're facing from the state, all the new challenges we're getting from the state, I don't believe anybody in our classroom has lost that human piece. You may want to pull your hair out once in a while, and we understand that. But I believe that, and from the board level too, because y'all are active in the schools, you're out in the community, you do the right things. And I had a girl the other day ask me, she said, do you all do how she put that, the right thing or what's right? And I said I would hope that we could say the least was right. So, I thank you all, but I really thank you all for coming in with hair on your head today. Because I know it's been a horrible 2 days for you all. We've spent 2 or 3 weeks on this, and we put out the best plan that we think we can for our staff without just telling them to stay blanketing in.
Well, you know, there was an interesting article this month in the American School Board Journal that talked about tenure, teacher tenure, and it says if you don't have teacher tenure, how do you get teachers to teach at-risk students? Because they're putting themselves professionally at risk. So, you know, that's such a common sense, but,
Law enforcement learned that a long time ago.
Common sense is not common.
Yeah, right, common sense is not common, as Brian says.
all right, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Now,
Kathy loves this part.
Yeah, and Mrs. Himmel, your comment about heart, and Mrs. Deutschman, your comment about what you saw going on certainly leads us into what we're talking about today. Good afternoon, Superintendent Himmel, members of the board, Mr. Mullen and Mr. Bradshaw. It is my privilege to acknowledge Floral City Elementary for receiving the Exceeding Expectations Award presented by the East Coast Technical Assistance Center. This award was determined after reviewing student achievement data from all the Title I schools in the state who had a free and reduced lunch rate of 50% or above. And I asked that information, it's about above 1,800 schools. Excuse me. Floral City was one of 11 schools in the entire state that was recognized as an Exceeding Expectations Award school. These 11 schools were also invited to share the strategies that made their school an Exceeding Expectations school and improved student achievement, and to receive recognition at the first annual banquet award, the 2012 Exceeding Expectations in Orlando in September. Mrs. Himmel and Mrs. Powers, would you come forward and present the plaque?
When we do these things, I keep thinking, I wish I could do a cartwheel. I tried that one time, wiped out about half the team. Janet, y'all wanna come up?
out of 11, four's the 11, I think all of us, let's go. Everybody. Yeah, look, that short one, yeah.
You wanna stand on my shoulder? That I can do, I can put it on my shoulder. Can you get everybody, we need more than
Yeah,
that?
everyone just kind of look this way, especially on this side. Thank you.
Hey, congratulations.
We're very proud of you.
It's so funny when you're doing the visiting too. Did y'all notice that every time you went to a school, everyone was smiling and happy? And you thought, gosh, they go through all this work, you would think maybe someone was tired or down. Not a soul that I met was anything but happy and smiling.
It's certainly one of our favorite times, I think, of the year, to be able to go and see that.
Oh, yes. That's 5:30.
That's 5:30.
Now we have the,
We have a
Red
red
Ribbon
ribbon.
Week coming up.
Red ribbon.
Yeah. Like that. Red ribbon.
That's not easy to say.
But everyone's in red too. That's good. Okay, thank you.
Members of the board, Mr. Mullen, Superintendent, we are very thankful to be here. We are representing a drug coalition and declaring the last week in October as Red Ribbon Week. We appreciate your willingness to help us proclaim that week. We have a little handy dandy packet for you to have with everything in it you'll need for Red Ribbon Week, including wearing your ribbon, hopefully, during that week, as a national celebration that we want to be drug-free. As part of this week, the Citrus County Sheriff's Office and with your school resource officer went into the schools to kick off a campaign that says synthetic drugs kill. 97 students from the middle school and high school presented posters. These were judged and presented today at the commissioners' meeting. 2 of the students from Lecanto High Schools were selected. Dr. Kennard sponsored billboards for the highways. We were hoping to get 1. We contacted Lamar Advertising, told them about this important campaign of synthetic drugs, and now we have 4 that were put up with the students' work in our county. We're very thankful for our community pitching in. If you're not aware of it, synthetic drugs are legal. They're legal for plants. Unfortunately, our convenience stores are selling these packets, often labeled like Scooby-Doo snacks. Kids are smoking it. They are dying. They are having convulsions. The sheriff's office joined with us and we went to 70 stores. 57 convenience stores willingly signed that the health of students in Citrus County was much more important than making money. 7 more stores said that they could not sign the voluntary letter, but they're not going to sell it. We now have 10 stores in Citrus County who said to the sheriff's office, this package is being sold, pays for all of my salary of my store. They buy it for 99 cents, they sell it for $19.96. It's a synthetic drug and it kills kids. Those 10 stores will be in an advertisement, will recognize all the stores that are not going to sell it. The sheriff's office and Partners for Substance Free will also list the 10 stores that are choosing to sell this product that are killing kids and adults in Citrus County. So part of Red Ribbon Week, we will kick that off. If you see the billboards, you know what it's about. If you see any stores that have these in their windows, they're part of the ones that said that they're not selling it. If they don't have one in there, either they chose not to or they're continuing to sell. Thank you for allowing us to proclaim Red Ribbon Week, the last week in October.
We're gonna go to.
Of course I do. With a beautiful group of people like this, absolutely. Say red.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
The next thing that we have on the agenda is at 5:30, it's a public hearing to approve the student progression plan. We finished all the rest, so we'll take, pardon? Approved red, thank you very much, okay. Would someone give a motion to approve Red Ribbon Week?
I'll make a motion that we approve Red Ribbon Week.
A second.
It's been moved by Ms. Doshman, second by Ms. Bryant to approve the proclamation for Red Ribbon Week,
I told you it was hard
October
to
the
say.
22nd to the 26th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. And now we'll take a recess until the public hearing, which is at 5:30. It's 15 to 5, it's about 45 minutes long.